Welcome to the Russ Joy Show! I'm Russ Joy. You figured that out because you're smart. It's also the name of the show. Oh, the other day I called it a shit show at the OK Corral. I don't know what it is right now, but it has gotten significantly worse if you're a Philadelphia 76ers fan, where it seems as though the world is imploding. Paul George may be injured, maybe out for a little bit, maybe be out for a long time. We don't know. Tyrese Maxey calls out Joel Embiid in a team meeting, which then gets leaked to the public, which Joel Embiid later calls the person who leaked it a real piece of shit. Also goes on a little bit of a whiny diatribe. Maybe he's trolling. Maybe he still hasn't learned that you have to be a grown-ass adult at some point and take a little bit of accountability. Oh, it's not good in Sixers land. Flyers land, things are a little bit more interesting. Maybe a little bit less toxic. Matvei Michkov takes on Bedard on Saturday. We're going to get into what the Flyers have done so far this week since the last time we spoke, and we'll look ahead to that game. And of course, the number one story in town, or at least the one that should be the number one story in town, your Philadelphia Eagles heading into Sunday Night Football against a talented Los Angeles Rams team. One of not quite a murderer's row of games, but a number of games that will test this team. You have LA, Baltimore, Pittsburgh. You have a little fluff thrown in there with Carolina, but a real stretch of potential, we want to say Super Bowl matchups, huh? With the Ravens, maybe with the Steelers. All right, we won't get too crazy, but there is some actual intrigue around the Philadelphia Eagles over the next few weeks. But we do have to, at some point here, probably in the not-too-distant future, lead off with what the hell is happening with the Sixers as they continue to implode. It is an absolute disaster zone of a start to the season, and it has gotten progressively worse. I can't believe how bad things have gotten beyond where they were when we last spoke on Tuesday, and yet here we are. We're going to break down what ended up happening with the Sixers behind the scenes. We will get to Joel Embiid's reaction. We will get to the reaction of Lou Williams, who went on a podcast to kind of maybe dissuade some people from taking that at face value, the report at face value. We'll get into Paul George on his show, kind of talking about who was in the room. We'll get into some of the reports that Joel Embiid's apparently going to go on a fact-finding mission to figure out who it was that leaked it to the press. It can't just be a normal Friday, can it? It can't just be a regular day to just enjoy basketball. No, because the Sixers are an absolute flaming pile of dog excrement. That is where your team, your town, your Philadelphia 76ers have landed. They enter tonight's game against the Brooklyn Nets in the NBA Cup, which we're all very excited about at 2-12. I'm sure people will be thrilled to have their eyes blown out by that horrific NBA Cup court. But before we get out to all of that, we're going to go out to the comments. Andrew Fawcett over on YouTube, dropping a nice little positive good morning. We appreciate that. Andrew actually just says morning. He didn't even say good morning. Maybe he doesn't think it is a good morning. Says, I might have to start following the Sixers a bit closer. This is better than any TV show out there right now. Andrew also says, smash the like button. T from the TO3 with a what up, Russ. DD Skinner with a morning. T from the TO3 is leaving for Los Angeles. Going out to watch the Rams and Eagles. Look at you, Trevor. You must be paying well down there at the radio station down there in Florida. Ford asks, do you still think they make the playoffs? 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 You kidding me? Playoffs? Taking a little bit of a sip of the morning coffee as I try to just piece together what the hell has happened to the Sixers. It pains me. You know, like even when I did the thumbnail for the show and I came up with the title for the show, I wasn't thrilled. I wasn't happy to call it Embiid's loser energy, but really, that seems to be the thing that's permeating the team and the organization right now. And it's gotten to a point now where it's almost impossible to give Joel Embiid the benefit of the doubt at this point. I want to go back to where we were on Tuesday. On Tuesday, we were kind of reacting to the fact that the Sixers had fallen to 2-11, that they were struggling mightily, and that things had gone, at the very least, things had gone sideways for the team. And that the hope was going to be, you're going to get back some combination of Maxey, Embiid, and Paul George, and maybe be able to go into the weekend riding those three, Maybe you're going to finally have a chance to see those three play together. I went into the whole long thing on Tuesday about why big threes in the NBA are such a hard thing to nail now and why you don't see many successful ones. There was actually a thing that Crossing Broad put out the other day that the Sixers have now had a half game where the three of them have played together, which means they only have to play another 15 and a half games, the three of them together, in order to match what Durant, Irving, and Harden played together in Brooklyn before James Harden forced his way out to Philly. It's an ugly, ugly situation. There's no way around it, and if you are a Sixers fan, I think it has gotten to the point now where it has gotten increasingly difficult to try to sell yourself on the notion that like things are going to turn around. Now, I can't go entirely into the darkest recesses of my mind and say that like it's over because again, the Eastern Conference is a wide open mess. Okay, Cleveland's 16-1. Their only loss coming to Boston in between Tuesday's show and today's. Boston still remains probably the best team in the East at 12-3. New York 9-6. Orlando 10-7. And then guys, it goes the Heat are 6-7. The Hawks are 7-9. The Pistons are 7-10. Like here, why am I reading this off? All of you who are watching live on the stream, you can follow along here with those wonderful eyes you got fastened in your head. And those of you who listen to the podcast feed, you can too, but you can pull it up on your phone at the same time. It's the beauty of podcasts and, having Chrome or whatever browser you use on your phone. But, like, this is what the Eastern Conference looks like. I mean, does this look like Murderer's Row to you? Because, like, it doesn't look like Murderer's Row to me at all. Like, there's a path here that despite how bad the Sixers have been, and they are in dead last, this is by no means over. They're 3.5 games out of the final playoff spot. 3.5 games, despite the fact that they're 2-12. So when Ford asks the question, do I still think the Sixers can make the playoffs? Yeah, not because they deserve to, but because this is a very bad conference. I mean, I don't think Milwaukee's going to spend the entire season down around the 11th seed range. Like, they'll eventually kind of turn things around. They've won 2 straight. Like, it stands to reason Milwaukee will jump up in there somewhere. I'm never sold on Atlanta. Detroit, no. Brooklyn, I had to watch Brooklyn take on Boston when I was up in New York for meetings. They're not a particularly good team. Charlotte's not inspiring. Indiana's okay. Chicago's a mess. Toronto's not very good. Washington's a joke. For better or worse, there is still a path here. The thing that I tried to come around to the other day was this. And this is going to be me trying to be positive before I get into why I think things are actually more of a mess, though. So when you look at a team and you go, all right, they're 2-12, they're 10 games under 500, it's an 82-game season, is it really the end of the world? Now, you can look at historical precedent about how few teams have ever gone off to that start and then gone on to make the playoffs, and that's fair. Historical numbers like that only hold so much weight. They don't factor in injuries. They don't factor in the ultimate talent of the team, if healthy. There are a lot of variables that historical trends don't necessarily give you the ability to kind of equate for, right? If we're being fair, under 10 games under is equivalent to having a bunch of 2-game losing streaks, a couple of 3-game losing streaks, and you're there. 2 2s, 2 3s. That's it. There's your minus 10 win, right? It's your 10-loss differential. Over the course of a season, you are going to have a couple of 2-game losing streaks. There might be even times where you lose 4 straight. It just looks especially bad because it's the start of the season. The positive you take away from it if you're a Sixers fan is that all right, well, you didn't have Tyrese Maxey for all these games. You didn't have Paul George for all these games. You didn't have Joel Embiid for all these games. The downside, of course, is the historical precedent that has been set that Embiid will and already has been injured, that Paul George was and has already been injured. The Maxey thing, not so much. Not as much of a history at the NBA level of him having debilitating injuries that are going to take him out for a long time. There's your positive. There's your silver lining that if these guys are able to play together, and we think that the supporting cast is as good as I tend to think they are within their roles, they should be able to win games. But this shit all comes back to Joel Embiid. Anybody who wants to say anything different is lying to themselves or lying to you. This is all Joel Embiid. We can get up in arms about the fact that, oh my God, Daryl Morey went out and signed a guy in Paul George who has chronic issues with his health, who has nonstop knee issues. We can certainly do that, okay? And by all means, I've been critical of Daryl Morey. I did give him credit that I think that the roster he's put around those guys, if those three are healthy, is a better supporting cast than they've had in I don't know, the last 5-6 years. And I still stand by that. I don't think that the supporting cast is particularly bad, but they are very much in specific roles. You can't expect Gordon to turn back the clock. You can't expect Kyle Lowry to turn back the clock. You can't expect Andre Drummond to look like some of his peak years in Detroit. Those days are gone. Those guys serve a role. They can't do much more than what they are expected to do. Clean up the glass. Provide some kind of distant shooting. Provide some kind of steady play as a backup point guard. That was out of order, but you get the point. This all comes back to Joel Embiid. This all comes back to the fact that he wasn't healthy to start the season. He is maddening because you have a player who seems to just not get it. You have a player who goes out publicly and says that he's done too much for the city to be treated the way that Marcus Hayes treated him. There is a crumb or a strand of fairness and truth to that he has come back and played in at times where it's probably not advantageous to his health. You go back to him having to wear the mask after the orbital bone fracture. You go back to what happened, was it last year where he had the Bell's palsy and he couldn't blink his eye, right? You are putting your health at risk. That is true. Whether people want to admit it or not, that is true. But there was no excuse for whatever happened this season. He went off and played in the Olympics, and somewhere along the lines got hurt either at the Olympics or between the Olympics and the start of the preseason. That is just a fact. It has to be a fact. The league said as much when they said that the Sixers lied to the public or misrepresented to the public his injury status. That's not our fault. If you're a Sixers fan and you're pissed off because Joel Embiid's hurt again and it has effectively trashed their start to the season, you're fair to feel like that. But here's where things got a little bit helter-skelter, okay? Joel Embiid gets called out in a team meeting. They fall to 2-11. Embiid gets called out in this meeting. Tyrese Maxey's the one apparently who says, you need to be on time for things. And when somebody asked, I guess, in the follow-up, and was kind of asked around sources within the organization, what exactly is Embiid late to? The response was everything. Joran Weitzman, who wrote a long book about the Sixers and their process, which I still haven't gotten yet, I should. He put up a tweet the other day with an excerpt from his book that showed that back in the Brett Brown days, Billy Lang had all of the other assistant coaches in a room, and they essentially staged an intervention with Brett Brown to be like, Joel Embiid has disrespected everybody in this room. And Brett Brown's like, well, why didn't anybody tell me? And Billy was like, well, I thought I have been telling you. And then Brett Brown wasn't much of an authoritarian, couldn't be a disciplinarian, couldn't get through to Embiid. And that was at the very start. So if you don't start that early with a young guy, bad habits continue to fester. They metastasize, and they eventually become what it seems like we have here. Here's Tyrese Maxey, who's this very positive, upbeat guy, well-liked. No one has a negative thing to say about the guy. And he has to say in a team meeting to the guy who's the franchise cornerstone, who so much of this rides on, who came into the season injured, he has to say, dude, you have to show up and, be on time. Because if you're not, it sets a bad example. Why the fuck is Tyrese Maxey the one who has to have that conversation? Why is that on Tyrese Maxey? Is it because he's also now a max player? Is it because he's viewed as a guy who's a long-term piece of whatever this team is supposed to be? Is that what it is? Because if it is, fine, fair. Is it because Paul George doesn't feel like he has the gravitas at this point? He's been hurt himself. He hasn't been part of this team for more than a few months. He doesn't feel like it's his place. He's a vet. He's a player who, while he hasn't won the NBA title, is certainly a guy who's been one of the most well-respected players in league circles and among his peers. Why does it fall on Tyrese Maxey to say it? How has Nick Nurse not said it? Am I to believe this means that Doc Rivers, in all of the years that he was the coach, Doc Rivers never brought this up? That to me is a real, just baseline problem. That's a thing that, like, everyone should feel pretty gross about, that it took Tyrese Maxey having to be the one to call Joel Embiid out. Now, that then blew up into a big thing, right? People going to bat for Tyrese Maxey. Good on you, fella. Awesome that you're the one to call it out. Joel Embiid's a bitch. Like, you saw this stuff all over Twitter. It was everywhere. Well, then you started to get some word from other people who weren't in the room but heard directly from people who were in the room about what that calling out actually looked like. Now, I want to throw over to this because I think context is king. Context is important here. We're going to first go to Lou Williams. Lou Williams was on Run It Back, and he kind of dove into what he heard about what was said in that meeting and what the mood was around Tyrese Maxey and Joel Embiid. Because, again, context is pretty important. None of us were in that room.
Coincidentally, I can give you guys an inside scoop on this thing because one way or another, I ended up on the phone with a few of the guys from the 76ers, and by all accounts, this was kind of blown out of proportion. You know, the idea of Tyrese calling Joel out and how it's been portrayed in the media as, you know, one of these type of blow up things. You know, from my understanding, they just had a conversation on accountability, just keeping everybody in check. You know, and sometimes you got to have that as a team, just making sure we all on the same page. Hey, bro, we understand you're not going to play in these games, but, you know, team meetings and all of that, it's important for you to be there. It's important for you to be there on time. So from my understanding, that was the nature of the conversation. That was the context of a conversation. It wasn't as much of Tyrese Maxey challenging Joel Embiid as has been stated. You know, it wasn't a conversation about accountability. By all accounts, those guys are doing just fine. They were sitting next to each other when we were on the phone, laughing and giggling and having a good time and trying to get this team back on the same page. And so that, from what I understand, that was the context of the conversation, not as much of the negative stuff that's trying to come out at this point.
So there is a former player, a guy who was well-liked when he played here. We always liked Lou Williams. So Lou says it was more of a saying it in the context of the meeting, that it wasn't like a, hey, asshole, you suck, we all hate you. It was a dude, like, just get it together. All right, so that's one part of it. And now we need to get to the other part, which was somebody who was in the room, and that was Paul George. So Paul George is on his podcast, and I want to get to what Paul George had to say because I thought that his bit here about who was in the locker room for the team meeting, where details leaked to the media, this is maybe a little bit telling because this is going to give you an idea of where Joel Embiid's mindset has switched to, and we're going to get to those quotes as well. All right, here, let's go over to Playoff P.
Could you guys go back and go, we know everyone that was in that room, or there's some people in there, obviously you might know them, but like, is there more people outside of the team, as in the players, sitting in that locker room?
No, I think we all know his name.
I'll say the people that was in that room is the people that's supposed to be in that room. And it's the people that go out and we're in the trenches with on a nightly basis. That's who was in that room.
Could you guys go back?
So that's an important distinction because, you know, obviously some of the thought coming out of it was, oh, it must have been like a staffer. Maybe it was somebody who was working on the arena crew. Maybe it was somebody who was in security. Maybe it was a locker room hand. No, it certainly sounds like whoever must have leaked whatever was said was from somebody who is a player. Could it have been a coach? When he says in the trenches, like maybe that does extend to the coaches as well. But it's interesting to me that like that's where this went next. So you walk away from it and you go, all right, is this a thing where the media blew things out of proportion again? And I'd say no. Like, again, the fact that Tyrese Maxey had to be the one to say something is probably an issue. But then we got to Joel Embiid because Joel Embiid's response to it, and after the Sixers lost another game, they lost a disappointing game on the road against a Memphis Grizzlies team that was on the second half of a back-to-back and a team that's not particularly good. Joel Embiid had some pretty shitty things to say, I think is fair. Had some pretty disappointing comments. Embiid was quoted as saying about his bond with Maxey, that's the relationship we have, nothing malicious. I like when people are telling me what I'm not doing good, what I need to do better, even though that part, the tardiness, maybe happened once or twice when I wasn't playing. There's no fucking chance that's right. There's zero chance that's real. Joel Embiid has had a reputation his entire career with the Sixers of being somebody who's not on time to meetings, of being somebody who shows up to the arena not that long before getting to the before tip-off with a murky injury status, who then comes out and says, "Oh, yeah, I guess I'm playing tonight." Like, no, I'm sorry. I find it very hard to believe that Joel Embiid has only ever been late to 1 or 2 meetings, and it only happened when he was injured. I don't believe that. I don't believe that in the least bit. Embiid also said of the person who leaked the details of the team meeting after falling to 2-11, whoever leaked that is a real piece of shit, but even then, we talk about a lot of things. I don't want to get into details, but the whole thing probably took 30 seconds. That's also not what has been kind of put out there, is that it was a 30-second team meeting. I don't believe that. I don't believe that because everything that came out around it was that there was an airing of things among a bunch of people in that room. That doesn't happen in 30 seconds. I do not believe it was a 30-second meeting. If it were, I don't think it would have been called a team meeting. Flat out. I find Joel Embiid's response to it to be so alarming on so many levels, and many of those things that I have the biggest issue with are the fact that he just seems to either live in his own bubble. He's not cognizant of what everybody else is feeling. He's trying to spin something for some reason in front of the media. He could just go with the very basic line of, it was a team meeting, I'm not going to get into what was discussed. Tyrese and I are totally fine. He said something. I think it was, fair. Maybe it was a little bit unfair. We're figuring it out. We're still good. No issues in the locker room. We're going to turn this thing around. Like, give the bullshit hockey answer. Seriously, just give the, we are a team. We're a team. Everything is for the team. He didn't do that. I don't know why. I can't get into his head. I don't know why it takes Joel Embiid I don't know why it's so hard for him to take any kind of accountability. Now, here's another reason why I think it's kind of bullshit. Because Pat Bev said, Pat Bev went on, I think it was his own podcast, or maybe it was Pardon My Take. I think it was on Pardon My Take. So Pat Bev goes on to Pardon My Take, and he even gets into Joel Embiid and about what it was like to play with Embiid and what it was like to not know his status up until a game. So we're going to throw to this, and then we're going to get to the comments to see what other people are feeling about Joel Embiid this morning. All right, here we go. This is Pat Bev on Pardon My Take.
There's a report that the Sixers held a team meeting, and Tyrese Maxey called out Joel Embiid for being late, quote, to all team activities and everything.
Everything?
And everything. All team activities and everything. So that implies everything is
everything.
Even not team activities.
He's just late on everything.
He's just late to everything.
Damn.
And he cites how that impacts the locker room, other players, and coaches. Does being late, does that make an effect on the general climate of an NBA team?
I think on any team.
Mm-hmm.
I think in any workspace also. You're not on time. It can rub off some people. But if you're not on time and you give him up 70,
yeah,
right? It's been times with Joel Embiid wasn't on time to practice. And you know me, come on, Joe, man. What's up, G? Come on, man. Come on, Joe. Come on, Joe. Be better, Joe. Be great, Joe. Be great. And then his response would be like, what the man, you get me out of bed? I'm an hour and a half away. I had to get up 2 hours, before, because everyone doesn't live the same spots.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? So, what we go do? Give me my ball. That same night he had 50 and we won.
Yeah.
I think we were 21-9 the first 30 games, like the best record since 2004, Allen Iverson when I was with Philly. So it's just surprising to see, especially because all the hard work that Nick Nurse and his coaches have put in. It's hard to see.
So there's Pat Bev. Now remember, we all loved Pat Bev until he left and said one or two things that, I don't know, people got upset with. But there's Pat Bev saying that when he played for the Sixers, Joel Embiid was late to practice on at least one occasion, and that there was maybe another time where he showed up not that long before opening tip-off. They try to call him out on he scores 50 points. Guys, I don't know what to say at this point. Even if you're the most diehard Joel Embiid defender, which I have been somebody who gives Joel Embiid a lot of the benefit of the doubt, try to take the human element into consideration. I try to take into account that the guy's been through a ton of injuries. He's been through the tragic loss of his brother. There are a lot of things that he's gone through. And yet at the same time, you are getting paid a lot of money to just show up and be a pro. And if you're not setting the example the right way, if you can't get yourself to practice on time, if you can't get yourself to team events on time and to the game on time, that says a lot about you. That is a character thing. That is a character flaw. That's a thing that you would expect that a guy would finally turn around. I always come back to, like, if we want to play the human element card here, Joel Embiid, the second, I'm very locked in on this. The second you become a parent, and you're an active, present parent, which Joel Embiid seems like a very loving dad. The second you become a parent, things change. Your priorities change. And there is a certain extra level of responsibility and accountability, because now not only are you trying to provide for yourself, for your spouse, you're trying to provide for that kid. And that child is really important to you. Now, there has been this like weird kind of revisionist history thing that's happened over the last few days as well, where people have then said, well, was Marcus Hayes right? Was Marcus Hayes right to call out Joel Embiid's work ethic? I hated the lead to the story. There is a kernel of truth in the story just about Embiid not being locked in the way that he's supposed to be. And it's a significant problem for this team. It genuinely is. I'm going to go out to the comments here really quick. I can't get to all of them because we have a couple of things and I'm on a very tight timeline here. Andrew Fawcett says, so what you're saying is Maxey is actually the leader of the team. Good for him on calling Embiid out. How it got leaked doesn't matter. I kind of tend to agree with that. I think it's better that it came out, but it maybe does speak to the fact that the locker room isn't as cohesive as you'd want, because if they were, nothing should have leaked. Durst says he was coddled most of his career, so he's just doing what he was trained to do. Doesn't excuse his behavior, don't get me wrong. Ford says, let's be real, this is over. It isn't going to get much better. Even if they make the playoffs, they won't make a significant noise. And with Embiid getting older, as is PG, they won't win a title. I don't know. We'll have to see. I can't totally rule them out. I told you, the East sucks. They could still get the 6th seed, even though they're 2-12. Jimmy King says over on YouTube, what if a player went and told their agent what happened, and an agent is the one who leaked the story? Seems possible. That could be. Could be. Or it could be a player told family, friend, whoever, and then it got leaked. That's possible. Possible. Ford says you can give a man millions, but it won't change his shitty habits. I guess that's possible. Yeah, I mean, not wrong. Andrew Fawcett says, I miss the AI days. He could do whatever he wanted because he was a gamer. Dude showed up every night. So here's the thing, though. There's your difference between Embiid and Allen Iverson, at least on reputation. AI was known as being a guy who, we all know, had the practice rant, although that was due in part to him being frustrated. There was a death of a close friend. That part never really was, I guess, as publicly known, or was never given probably the amount of, publicity that it should have, that was part of why he went on that rant. But, like, Embiid, to the point of, like, Pat Bev there, like, he shows up, he drops 50, they win. When you win, you're able to get away with a lot. When your team starts off 2-12, no, you don't get to just do whatever the hell you want. People do start to look for reasons that things have fallen apart. Connor Allen says vibes are worse than 2020 with Jonathan Simmons playing for the team. You might not be wrong. A lot of people who I love and respect and care about, who are Sixers fans, we have like a group chat, and usually it's kind of like, hey, maybe the Sixers will kind of figure it out tonight. Maybe this is the night. They've all given up. They're done. Like, they are legitimately done. Game over. Like, they don't care. Flat out, they're done caring about the Sixers. Good luck to the Sixers. Good luck to the marketing team. Because if Paul George is hurt and Embiid doesn't turn his shit around and this thing continues to be a mess, it's over, friends. This whole thing is dead and done. And I don't want to hear about Cooper Flagg or whatever. Like, no, I don't care. I don't want to see the idea of like tanking a season now in what could be one of the final years of Joel Embiid maybe being, well, he doesn't look like top 3, top 5 MVP candidate Joel Embiid, but let's just imagine that he does what he's done in the past where he shakes off the rust and then he does look like that dominant player. He only probably has 2 or 3 years left of being that level. Are you really willing to burn one of those years to try to get another young player in here? Maybe. Maybe you do if the thought is you want to trade Embiid down the line, or if he does fall apart, you have somebody else to pair with Tyrese Maxey. Like, then maybe. But so much of it just falls on, like, all right, you're officially giving up on Joel Embiid. I don't know how the Sixers organization is able to survive that, especially since they went and gave him an extension earlier than they needed to. We'll see. Durst says 6th seed would be the best case scenario, and a lot of things would have to break their way. I agree. Hopefully the things that don't break are Joel Embiid or Paul George. And we're going to leave it there. Now, let's talk about the Flyers. Now, there was a little bit of breaking news, and this is not related to the Flyers or to the Eagles, but we are going to just touch on this for a second. This broke right before the show went live. Jason Kelce is apparently going to host a late night show on Friday nights on ESPN at I think it said 1 a.m. Jason Kelce is going to do a show live from somewhere in Philly with a live crowd. Let me know what you think. I don't know how to feel. I like Jason Kelce. I think that Jason Kelce is getting there was a clip going around, I think from LA or something, where somebody was I don't know. I kind of go it sounds like mental illness with the way this guy was attacking him for not signing an autograph. But then Kelce gets out of the car and he goes over and he signs it, and then the guy's like, "Oh, bless you. I'm sorry I was so mean. I love you and I appreciate you." And I was like, "Holy shit." Jason Kelce's got to be careful because I'm not going to play that clip because I just think it's very unhinged. But Kelce has now run himself into a few situations where because he's this man of the people and he's trying to keep that up, he's putting himself at risk from a security perspective. He's such a man of the people that I do start to worry that at some point somebody's going to try to hurt the guy because people are unhinged and awful. And he just go find the clip. I promise. I'm sure Crossing Broad, if they haven't done a story about it yet, they will today. It's this very unhinged thing about getting an autograph, and he comes out of the SUV and through the gate, and I'm I don't know what you're doing. But Kelce's going to do a late night show. I think it's called This Is Late Night. Good for him. We'll have a review of it when it finally happens. But man, it makes me very nervous. All right, so we've got that. Let's get to the Flyers here quick. So Matvei Michkov takes on Connor Bedard this weekend, and that's really all that matters. Remember, they were drafted in the same draft class, and there was a thought going into the NHL draft that year that had Matvei Michkov not been a Russian player who was under contract in the KHL, that he could have been the number 1 pick, or he would have at the very least have been the number 2 pick behind Bedard. Now, Bedard got to play all of last season, had a very strong rookie season, won the Calder, the Rookie of the Year. Bedard this year, 15 points. He's got 3 goals, 12 assists. It's a solid start to the season for him. Matvei Michkov, our Russian savior, the guy who is supposed to lift everyone's spirits, give the Flyers fans something to think about. 6 goals, 9 assists, 15 points. My friends, Matvei Michkov is already a better player than Connor Bedard. Right? Maybe not. But maybe. Michkov has just as many points in 2 fewer games, and his plus-minus is better, -3 versus -6. Now, it's going to be interesting to see how these two play. 2 19-year-old players taken in the same draft class. This is the kind of rivalry. If Flyers Blackhawks goes the way that it should on Saturday, this should be the showcase of the next generation of stars. This is the kind of rivalry between Michkov and Bedard that should be I don't know. I never really viewed Giroux and Crosby to be a rivalry in the same way. Let's say Ovechkin and Crosby would actually be a pretty apt comparison. Taken in the same draft class, they were, back-to-back picks. But, those two ended up being the faces of the league for a long time. This could be that. Michkov and Bedard. Something that the NHL can actually market around and build around. Now, there have been moments that Michkov has been out of the lineup. There have been moments where there have been some questions about John Tortorella scratching him, whether or not it's good for his development, all that. Tortorella had a surprisingly long, take on Michkov and about how he was going about coaching him. He did this on the TNT show when the Flyers were on national TV. And the Spark Notes version, or the Cliff Notes version, or whatever the hell it is this. He's meeting with Michkov once a week with an interpreter, where they both air their concerns, their questions, their thoughts. So Tortorella isn't able to really coach Michkov in the moment on the bench because Mishkov's English isn't there yet. And Tortorella said that apparently for a while they were trying to use Zamula as the translator on the bench, and then Zamula's play dropped significantly. So they're like, no, go back to being a player. We'll figure out something different to do with a translator. So they're meeting once a week, and that apparently Michkov has had some moments where he hasn't agreed with decisions, and there have been times where Tortorella hasn't agreed with some of the things that Michkov has done, and that they are working on that relationship. They're working on kind of figuring it out together. If you're a Flyers fan, you can look at a few different things. One of the things that, if you want to consider it a concern, is that against Colorado and against Carolina, he didn't get on the score sheet. He's still putting pucks on net. He still looks like he's got the ability to be a dynamic scorer. He's only 19. I will be very interested to see if he gets up for this game a little bit more. I will be interested to see if Matvei Michkov kind of takes this one personally. Again, he wasn't the number 1 overall pick in his draft. Connor Bedard was. There's something that makes me think there's going to be a little bit of extra in this one. So if you're a Flyers fan, that's the one to watch. And we will be down there for the Press Row Show on Saturday. It's a 1 o'clock start. Andrew Fawcett says it should be an exciting game. Michkov needs to play with TK again. It's actually interesting that you mentioned TK because that was another thing that Tortorella said, is that he's trying to convince or explain to Michkov that you shouldn't be afraid of making mistakes, that because of the offensive plays that Michkov is able to make, he's okay with some of the mistakes, and he actually compared Michkov to Travis Konechny in that way, saying, like, TK's crazy, you never know what he's going to do, and that from time to time, like, you're just going to have to roll with it. One of the other interesting things was that he said that he doesn't have a comparison of somebody that he's coached before, but he said that the way that Michkov is able to, like, work in, like, 3-4 foot passing lanes and execute on some plays kind of reminded him a little bit of Panarin, that they were very different. Panarin was a faster player who would kind of like slow down to meet the play, whereas Michkov isn't the fastest skater, but at the same time is able to process the game at a different level. And that was sort of his comparison, but not fully. Anyway, very interesting thing. Make sure you tune in to Snow the Goalie for the Press Row Show where we do that. I don't know if we're doing a Snow the Goalie today or not, and if we don't, we are going to be doing one for next week. We have to start going into the studio at Wells Fargo Center. The studio is finished. And now that's going to be part of our thing, of our weekly cadence with the team, is that we're going to do shows in the studio. So if you haven't done so, now's a good time to subscribe over to Snow the Goalie. By the way, also very valuable idea. It's a good idea to subscribe to the Russ Joy Show on YouTube, because the drive to 500 subscribers, my friends, we are almost there. We are significantly closer than we've ever been before. The channel, as of right now, is at 455 subscribers. We are 45 away. And as we all know, as the part of the drive to 500 subscribers, I will randomly select one subscriber to the YouTube channel. That person will win the jersey of their choice, worth up to $175. It should be a Philly team, but if it's not, I'm still going to buy it. You're still going to get it. Please don't pick a Crosby jersey. If somebody trolls me and makes me buy a Sidney Crosby jersey for them, I'm going to be very upset. Very, 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 very upset. Okay? So there we go. Drive to 500. If you haven't subscribed already, make sure you do so. We are 45 subscribers away. Dersh says, longtime supporters get our names entered multiple times. That would be nice. If there were a way. I wonder if I could figure. No, I'm not going to do that. I didn't make. That might be part of the next one. Listen, I'm going to continue to do different drives to different goals, okay? Because it's important. I like the growth of the YouTube channel. It's important. You can also subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. Now, I have to roll out of here in a couple of minutes. Couple of high-level thoughts for the Eagles as they prepare, again, to take on the Rams on Sunday Night Football. Los Angeles is a team that obviously the Eagles have to be weary of. They're 5-5 on the season. They're over 500 at home. They're 3-2. This LA team is one that you can't take for granted. And the big thing, if you're the Eagles, is you need to ride some momentum into next week against Baltimore, because that game is also on the road. That's in Baltimore. If you're the Eagles, what are the big keys to winning? The biggest key is that the defense continues to produce the way that it has. I will continue to stand resolute in the belief, if you have a defense that's somehow able to keep a team to 27 points or fewer, the way that this defense has done for I don't know. When's the last time they allowed more than 27 points? It couldn't have been. I guess it was against the Bucks. I think it was the Bucks game. The Bucks, they gave up 33 points. I think it was the last time they've given up 27 or more. Since then, they've given up 16 to the Browns, although it wasn't all on the defense. Remember, there have been some special teams touchdowns in here. But 16 to the Browns, 3 to the Giants, 17 to the Bengals, 23 to the Jags, 6 to the Cowboys, 18 to the Commanders. If this defense continues to allow, 24 seems absurdly low, but if they can hold teams to 27, this high-powered offense should be able to put up 28-plus points a game. That, to me, is an absolute given. There's no reason that it shouldn't happen. Okay? That's the big key. If the defense shows up and continues to play this bend, don't break, Vic Fangio style, the Eagles should win on Sunday night, and then you get the biggest matchup. I know that the game where they host the Steelers is going to be important, but the game where they take on the Ravens in Baltimore, I almost hope they flex that to Sunday night as well. That's the one to watch. But you can't have an eye on Lamar Jackson and the Ravens yet. You have to focus on the task at hand this weekend against Matthew Stafford and the LA Rams. I will be back on Tuesday. Tuesday is a big show. I promise it's going to be a big one because we're going to break down Sunday Night Football and a whole bunch of other things. This show also might be changing days. I'm hitting a point now where I'm kind of sick of having to wait a few days in between Tuesday and Friday. This show might be going to 3 times a week. I did have somebody say to me the other day, you should go every day, which seems kind of insane. But I did have somebody suggest it. I don't think I can go to every day. But this might move to 3 days a week. I'll keep you posted. You can let me know in the comments. Remember, if you joined live, I appreciate you. But if you can, go into the regular comments section. Let me know. What days should this show go? Should it be 2 times a week? Should it be 3 times a week? What days should this show air? You let me know. And I will talk to all of you Tuesday at 8:30 a.m. here on the Russ Joy Show. And I'll see some of you on the Press Row Show Saturday afternoon. Have a great weekend, everybody. I'll talk to all of you very, very soon.